don't get the new Sony 16-25 f2.8. Get one of these instead. Today I want to talk a little bit about the new Sony lens as a 16-25 that came out recently, and to really give you my honest thoughts on the process of if it's such a good lens to get or what I would recommend instead that I think is more bang for your buck. For me personally, the 16-25 seems like a good idea on paper, but in reality, when it comes down to the price point for what you're getting out of the lens, seems like a hard choice to really commit to. For me personally, I've used a lot of Tamron lenses and third-party lenses when it came down to my cameras because a lot of the Sony lenses just really seem too out of my price range because of what you would get out of them, especially as I was making more video and photo content for YouTube and for client work as I grew my skills. I've gone from the ranges of using the Tamron 20mm as a one kind of like prime lens for vlogging, but then I went ahead and got my 17-28 Tamron that I think would be a better bang for your buck than this new Sony lens. The 17-28 by Tamron is also an f2.8 lens where you give up 1mm in the wide range to add 3mm onto the more, kind of getting into the telephoto side of range. The 16-25 by Sony sounds good on paper because you have a lot of good customization buttons and everything like that the Tamron doesn't give you, and it zooms externally and everything compared to the Tamron 70-28 zooms in internally. So a lot of people have been comparing it from what I've been researching upon it that it's a little bit smaller, the Sony lens compared to the Tamron, but if you take into consideration that you have internal zooming, it just kind of doesn't really matter to me. Personally, having a lens that's a 16-25 to be about $1,200 seems a little bit crazy to me when it's not something too crazy of a lens focal range. To me, it makes sense when you have the 16-35, but obviously you're going to be paying out that price range, for the G Master lenses that Sony provides compared to having a third-party lens that has a little bit less customization and things of that sort within the lens itself. But with that being said, is it really something that we're needing to have all these customization buttons in a more affordable lens lineup? The reason why Sony has been coming out with the 16-25 and the new 24-50 is to have a little bit more of the price range of lenses that are more affordable for people to get into, with having a good amount of customization within the lens itself that people could really enjoy and want to dive into more Sony lenses. So for me personally, on that aspect, I think it's great that Sony's bringing out a little bit more into their, affordable lens lineup. But at the same time, it's kind of weird to see because that awkward focal range of 16-25 for $1,200 when I can get the Tamron 17-28 for about $800. That's kind of wild to me to see a $400 difference for me to really consider that Sony lens or even be able to recommend it to people, especially the people that are diving themselves into getting higher end gear. Because at the end of the day, there's a reason why they're going with that lens over getting the G Master series of lenses from Sony that are a lot pricier. So can I really recommend the Sony lens when it comes down to it, even for myself? Well, honestly, no. I'm not going to be spending $1,200 on a lens that I think I can get more out of a 17-28 by Tamron if I buy it either new or used, because if you get in the used market, you can even save further amounts of money that in reality you could do a lot of the same things anyway. I've even had my 20-40 by Tamron that's an f2.8 because I was fine giving up that wider range of the 17 range to 20 to get that 40 range into it because it just made more sense for me. I know I like to shoot 35mm a lot and the 40mm range is really nice as well, but also I'm able to keep it into the wider range in the 20 and 24 where I can do a little bit of the vlogging type of videos, but also can do a little bit of good architecture and landscape shots within one lens. And the price point for this lens is actually quite nice. I believe it's $699. So yeah, the price difference of that aspect just makes sense. And the size form factor of it is also very small, even with the zooming out of the lens itself. So for me, I've been highly recommending this lens as well to almost everybody that has asked me about it, or if they ask me when they're looking for a wider range to mid-range type of lens, I tell them to go with this lens because it's just too good for the money. Now, another Sony lens that I think that could be into your, price and realm that you might want to get, despite of it being an f4, has been the 20-70 Sony lens. I've actually used this lens quite a bit now, and it has become one of my favorite lenses to use on the daily, especially when I'm pairing it up with my ZV-E1 for kind of the vlogging type of needs, because then I can do all the way from 20 to the 70 range to cover all my, factors and everything. And because the ZV-E1 has really great low light capabilities like my Sony a7S III, I don't really mind having that f4, especially for video. I actually took this lens with me to Europe to do it as my one-stop shop for video and then vlogging and everything, and paired up with my 35-150, and it worked perfectly. Usually I use my 20-40 to pair it up with my 35-150 because of the similarities of range of where it cuts off to then where it continues on. But I knew that I didn't want to be changing lenses too much when it came down to the video form when I'm out and about in a different country. So I went with the 20-70, and giving up that range of the wider range with the 16-20, I was okay with it. Unless you're really planning to do a lot of, super vlogging type modes with minimal to no range needed, that Sony 16-25 could sound like a great investment, especially if you want to go with a Sony type of lens, because I'm sure it's going to work perfectly with the autofocus, pairing it up with the Sony cameras, as well when it comes down to the in-body stabilization. Like when I use the dynamic active stabilization with my ZV-E1, it just works really nicely with the Sony lenses. So that's my only option of what I can think why people would want to go with that new Sony lens, but my recommendation would be any of the lenses that I've been talking about. I mean, having the Tamron 17-28 or the 20-40, they're both f2.8, compete very well with the new Sony 16-25, depending on what range are you willing to give up on and or add to it. As well as having a Sony lens, if you want to go with that, the 20-70 is just really great when it comes down to even the f4. I think it works perfectly, it does wonders, and I'm not afraid to shoot at an f4, so that's just me, I guess. And one lens that I'm sure somebody's going to, advise on maybe getting is going to be the Sigma 16-28 Contemporary, which I've heard really great things about it for the price point. The only drawback that I've been seeing a lot of is just the autofocus isn't as smooth as the Tamron. So from my personal experience, because I've never used a Sigma, but never had any issues with my Tamron lenses, I would recommend the Tamron lens, but it's up to your discretion anyway. But all in all, that's just kind of my thought process when it comes down to thinking of what's the point of this new lens by Sony. And in reality, it all comes down to this. They're wanting to bring affordable lenses. They're a lot more condensed down so that they can pair them up with their full frame type of cameras that are like the A7C series and the ZV-E1. Because, well, they're bringing new full frame lineup of lenses. They're more compact compared to the A7 series of like the A7 III, 4, A7Ss and everything like that, because they're a little bit bigger type of mirrorless camera. So it does make sense what they're trying to do. So I'm not hating on that aspect of Sony. I'm glad they're innovating as much as possible within themselves compared to other brands sometimes. But coming down to the spec sheet of the price point to what you're getting out of a lens still doesn't seem like that much of a good deal to me personally, and I can't see myself getting it. I know a lot of YouTubers that get to review those, lenses and everything, get to talk about it nicely and say, more of a showcase rather than a review, because if Sony wants you to do a video on it to showcase it on launch day, to me it's more of a showcase versus a review, because you can't really review it as you would want to, I would assume, because depending what you have to sign. Like for example, whenever I work with Tamron and they loan me lenses, because they've been very gracious enough to lend me lenses and work with me that way, we never have any agreement of I can't say this, can't say that. They literally just say, here, just make sure that you enjoy the lens, talk about it however you like to, send it back by this date, and that's pretty much it. So I get to speak freely about it. They've been very nice at it. They even featured one of my videos of the 17-50 f4, which is another lens you could look into if you don't mind, the f4 range, to get that 17-50 range. That I thought it was really great, because even at f4 it was great. But they were very nice to feature my video in their newsletter because of the points that I touched on that they thought it was great that people would know, and being my honest self and speaking about reality of how that lens would work on a real case scenario. But overall, that's pretty much it when it comes down to the thought process of this new Sony 16-25. I would love to know, is it going to be the lens for you, or is it not going to be, and what would you prefer? Personally, I'm very curious to know the people that will say that they want to get it. I really would love to know why you would want to get this lens over the competitors of the third-party lenses, besides just saying that it's because it's Sony. I would love to know more of that thought, so make sure to leave a comment down below to hear what you have to say, and that way we can have some discussions. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.